Previously on Episode 2, Judge Richard Whitmore believed criminals deserved punishment, but everything changed when he mysteriously woke up inside the life of Daniel Carter, the same young man he once sentenced without mercy. For the first time, Richard experienced hunger, humiliation, fear, and the crushing pain of poverty. He watched Daniel's sick mother struggle to survive, while bills piled up and eviction threatened their home. Every door they turned to for help was closed. When Daniel's mother desperately needed medicine, Richard faced an impossible choice.
Please, you don't understand.
With no
My
money
mum is
left,
really sick.
he stole. Moments later, security guards dragged him away in handcuffs, while strangers judged him without listening to his story. And then came the greatest shock of all. Richard found himself sitting inside his own courtroom, facing himself, cold, heartless, unforgiving. As Judge Whitmore prepared to destroy Daniel's life once again, Richard finally understood the suffering he had ignored for years. Then suddenly, everything disappeared. A mysterious voice confronted him for the pain he had caused innocent people. "You judged lives you never understood." Broken by guilt, Richard begged for another chance. And when he finally woke up back inside his mansion, he realized the experience had changed him forever. Now, Judge Richard Whitmore must decide whether redemption is truly possible, or whether some sins can never be forgiven. The next morning, everyone inside the courthouse noticed something strange about Judge Richard Whitmore. He looked different, quieter, softer, human. His assistant handed him the day's first case file, a 16-year-old boy, arrested for stealing a mobile phone. Normally, Richard would have delivered punishment immediately. But this time he paused. When the teenager entered the courtroom, Richard carefully studied him. The boy's hands trembled from fear. His exhausted mother sat behind him crying quietly. Richard felt something painful twist inside his chest. He remembered Daniel. He remembered hunger, fear, humiliation. "Why did you steal the phone?" Richard asked quietly. The courtroom looked shocked. Richard Whitmore never asked questions like that. The teenager lowered his head. "My younger brother needs surgery," he whispered. "I didn't know what else to do." Silence filled the room. Richard slowly removed his glasses. For the first time in years, he truly listened. Then he spoke. "This court believes justice must include mercy." The prosecutor looked stunned. The teenager's mother burst into tears. "Instead of prison, the defendant will enter rehabilitation, community service, and educational support." The entire courtroom began whispering. People could not believe what they were hearing. But Richard no longer cared about appearing powerful. He cared about being fair. Over the following months, dramatic changes spread across London. Judge Whitmore began helping struggling offenders instead of instantly destroying their futures. Young addicts received treatment programs. Teenagers received counseling. Single parents received support. Richard still punished dangerous criminals. But now he understood that not every criminal was evil. Some were simply desperate. News reporters quickly noticed the transformation. "The Iron Judge has changed." One headline read, "Some politicians criticized him. He's becoming soft." But ordinary citizens slowly began respecting him. One afternoon, Richard visited a rehabilitation center, and there he saw Marcus Hill, the teenager whose life he once destroyed. Marcus froze in shock. "Judge Whitmore?" Richard looked ashamed. "I owe you an apology." Marcus stared silently. Richard continued, "I punished you without understanding your life. I cannot erase what happened to you. But I am trying to become better." Marcus' eyes became emotional. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then Marcus nodded slowly. "That matters more than you think." Richard felt tears building in his eyes, because forgiveness felt heavier than punishment. That evening, Richard returned home and found someone standing outside his mansion. Emily. His daughter. Richard looked shocked. "Emily?" She smiled nervously. "I was nearby." Richard immediately opened the door. "Please come in." They sat together awkwardly in the living room. For a moment, neither knew what to say. Then Emily finally spoke. "People are talking about you." Richard sighed. "Probably not good things." Emily shook her head softly. Good things. Richard looked surprised. Emily smiled faintly. They say, you actually listen now. Richard lowered his eyes. I spent years believing punishment fixed everything. Emily nodded. And now? Richard looked toward the rain outside the window. Now, I think understanding matters before judgment. Emily's eyes filled with tears. That's all Mum ever wanted you to understand. Richard felt emotional instantly. I wish I learned sooner. Emily gently held his hand. It's not too late. Those words healed something broken deep inside him. Weeks later, Richard faced the biggest case of his career. A young man named Tyler Brooks stood accused of armed robbery. The newspapers demanded harsh punishment. The public wanted revenge. But during the trial, Richard discovered Tyler had grown up abused, homeless, manipulated by criminals since childhood. On the final day, reporters packed the courtroom, expecting the old ruthless Judge Whitmore to return. Richard sat silently for a long moment, then he spoke. Justice is not revenge. The courtroom became completely silent. This young man must face consequences for his actions. However, society also failed him long before he failed society. Reporters immediately began writing. Richard continued. This court sentences Tyler Brooks to prison with mandatory education, therapy, and rehabilitation support, because punishment without healing only creates more pain. Some people looked angry. Others looked emotional. But Richard no longer feared criticism. Because for the first time in his life, he finally understood true justice. Months later, London glowed beautifully beneath golden evening sunlight. Richard walked slowly beside the River Thames while cold wind moved gently across the water. The city no longer felt empty. For years, he believed, power made him important. But now he understood compassion mattered far more. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. A message from Emily appeared. Proud of you, Dad. Richard smiled warmly. Tears filled his eyes. Because life had given him something precious. A second chance. And this time, he refused to waste it. If this story touched your heart, don't leave without subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Do you believe people can truly change? Let us know below.
No matter how dark the night, your story is not over yet.